Hi, everyone. Welcome to the dialogues of the 24th edition of the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival. My name is Christian Sida. I am the programming director at the festival. Today, I'm here to have one of the first dialogues we have at the festival with Mexican-Canadian director Nicolás Pereda, who is joining us to talk about his film Cobre. In English, the translation is Copperas, just very literally translation. How are you, Nico? Welcome.
Good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's
No,
nice to talk to you again, Christian.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you. And also, was thinking since I think it was my second year working in the festival. We have shown all of your films from Perpetuum Mobile to this one. I think probably maybe a couple of shorts we haven't shown. What number of your film is this? 10, 11,
I think so. Yeah, I think 11 maybe, something like that.
11
Yeah.
maybe? You
Yeah.
don't remember so many films?
I mean, I haven't counted.
You haven't counted. Okay. Well, Nico is
Yeah,
special
some
for the
I
fest.
rather forget. So
You rather forget, yeah, too many films. Nico is special for the festival because he's Canadian and we focus on showing Latin Canadian films. He's Mexican Canadian. You study your master's in York University or your
yeah,
bachelor,
also my undergrad. Yeah.
your undergrad in York. And later you came to Vancouver where you taught at Simon Fraser University. That's one of our venues. Our opening film will be there. So it's special to have you here with talking with us, Nico. So as I say, we show all your films since Perpetuum Mobile. Uh, some of our Vancouver audiences know your films. Some of them don't know your films. For those who don't know, you always work with the same group of actors. So that's something that makes your cinema very unique. It's always the four or five same people. It's Lázaro, Francisco, Luisa, Tere, Jose El Rolo, maybe others that come and go. And but before we get to the film, I wanted to ask you, what is the synopsis for you of this film, Cobre, Copper? What is it for you? How what is what would you say is the synopsis for you of this film?
Um, it's about a miner, a worker of the mines who finds a body on the side of the road, and that changes his life in a way, like it would anyone that who's, if you see a dead body in the road, you question a lot of things. And he's developed a sickness, um, and so he doesn't want to go to work. And then in that process, we see his family life, and we understand a little bit what his family life is like. The thing with the film is that we're not sure if he saw a dead body, and we're not sure if he's really sick. We just know that he says so. And then with sicknesses, the strange thing with sicknesses is that sometimes even the person who's feeling sick doesn't know really if they're feeling sick because they're making themselves sick or if they're actually sick. So there's a strange line of where does lying start with sicknesses? I think we can all connect to that idea that sometimes we can exaggerate the sickness, but then we actually really feel really sick, or we're in the middle of the night and we feel like this is like the worst sickness I've had, and then you wake up and you're like, ah, it's not so bad. And so he's in kind of that state, and also because he works in a mine, you get paranoid that you have respiratory problems because you work there. Um, So the whole film is about this ambiguity of who this person is, how his relationship with his family is very ambiguous. Anyway, I know it's not a good synopsis, but it's always difficult for me to write synopsis because the basis of the films are not stories with beginning, middle, and ends. It's more about observing an environment, seeing how different people live in that environment. And sometimes there are things that resemble stories, like something happens that changes, the course of things. But the main drive for the films is more an observation of a kind of a universe. So a synopsis would include sort of just the description of that universe more than, like a cause and effect chain of things that lead to some kind of resolution. Like the characters tend to start in a similar place where they end. And in this case, when he sees the body, it's a very beginning of the film. So something changes, but it changes at the very beginning, not somewhere in between. So something happens at the very beginning, and then the rest of the film is just observing the consequences of that thing and observing his life.
Yeah, you say it doesn't sound like a very uh, fun synopsis, but actually the film is very, the film is fun in a way. It's not to laugh, but it's like it has the British humor that you have in your film sometimes.
I mean, it does have, I think, some moments of laughter. It's not comedy like outright, of course, especially with the synopsis that I just said. Like, obviously, doesn't sound like a comedy, but I find that everyday life observed from the side, when you see someone else's everyday life, it's full of comedy generally. Like all our sort of like little problems and frictions and coincidences and ideas about how to change our lives, uh, sometimes because they're ingenious, sometimes because they're pathetic, sometimes because of, for various reasons, there is something very comedic about everyday existence. So I don't push the comedy, like there's no jokes and things like that, or like setups to make things particularly funny, but just sort of, uh, sometimes some moments in life when someone comes up with an idea to do something to act in the world, it can just end up being absurd, and that absurdity turns funny. In the case of this film, when they sort of, um, he's very desperate to get an oxygen tank, and so his process of trying to get that oxygen tank are creates some funny moments, I think.
And I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you did this at the beginning of your films, but what's with the component of sound? I don't know if you can call it music, but with the sounds that you have included in your films lately, what does it, what has it motivate you to do it? Did you use it before? I don't remember your early films using it as much, or how is sound is becoming more of a part of your films lately?
So since my the previous film before Copper is called Lázaro at Night, and in that film I started thinking about possibilities for sound ideas, like so formal possibilities. And that film is more radical in terms of what happens in sound. Like we hear a scene, but we're looking at one scene, but we're hearing a different scene, things like that, that are a little bit more experimental in that sense. This film has music, a little bit of something like you would consider music. It has a score that only appears three times in the film. So at the very end, at the beginning, and at some point in the middle. So it's very sparse because I tend to not use music, but it has some. And yeah, I've been more open to experiment to doing some things like, like having a score that is related to the emotional state of the character. It's like a more traditional thing to do, which I had done in the past. Um, but yeah, I think the rest of the sound is relatively more, direct sound of whatever's happening in the scene is what you're listening to, and not to. I work with a sound designer who at the first added a lot of sounds, and so the work was more about taking stuff out of that sound design rather than putting it in. In previous films, I did the sound design myself, and I tried to keep it really sparse. So I would use whatever direct sound I got in the shoot, and then just kind of fix it a little bit, and that's it. This film, we added a bit more sort of atmosphere. It's a more atmospheric film than many of my films.
And,
There's like
and,
some.
and then you have a new film that we're gonna show probably next year that is called Everything Else Everything else
It's
is
not.
noise. Right. And that you use a
And
lot
that
of music. Yeah.
and that one is the most current film. Everything else is noise. Is much more sound uh,
It's
conscious. So
conscious.
there's like lots of little things. It's a film about musicians, about noise, about living in a very noisy environment. I do again this thing where you see one scene and you're listening to a different one at some point. Yeah, so it's a bit more complex in sound as well. This one, Copper, is more traditional in the way the sound is built with an atmosphere, some music. Yeah.
And Copper world premiere last year at San Sebastian Film Festival, right?
It showed San Sebastian. It had screened before in Film
Oh, screen.
Marseille,
Oh, screen before in Marseille. Okay.
and then it's screened in San Sebastian. Yeah.
After. Okay. So I was gonna say that's a very big world premiere. San Sebastian for you haven't been back in that section in San Sebastian in a long time, I think.
Found a screen in San
Faunas
Sebastian.
in Horizonte Latinos. Oh, okay.
It was not in Horizontes Latinos. It was in that one was in the other section, the Tabacalera,
Tabacalera. Okay, the more experimental
a little
section.
bit more experimental section. It's not that experimental. It's still San Sebastian.
Yeah, yeah, San Sebastian at the end.
But yeah, that was, and I don't remember. I don't think Lázaro screened in Lázaro de Noche. I can't remember.
But interesting, your films are small and they go in the same section as the big as the last year you were with the biggest film of Chile and the biggest film of Argentina and others. So it's interesting
Yeah.
how your film can squeeze into those sections of
Yeah, I mean,
festivals.
festivals allow for that, right? Like maybe I won't get screenings in the multiplexes and things like that, that those films will, but then festivals, it's like this year I have a film at Toronto International and at New York Film Festival and the main slate. And so it's like, yeah, it's together with really big films. So.
Yeah. Um, when I was saying at the beginning that you always work with the same group of actors from the a theater company. When you write, I guess this question they ask you many times. I guess you think in your characters. What I guess you have the story, and then you develop the story with each of the characters that you always work with, or how do you develop the story to
It's
work the script?
almost always it starts with one scene, like a little scene that's kind of interests me for one reason or another, like some interaction, something
For
that
example, Cobre. What was the scene that you had in your mind?
I think Cobre started with the relationship of the aunt and Lázaro
Okay,
and the dead body. It was just like that first scene. It's not even that much, but it's the first scene where like someone comes back home and tells someone else that they saw a dead body.
that's pretty
And
big.
it was someone that had to be family member that feel, but that had an ambiguous sort of sexual tension. So I was interested in the in someone that lives really in the. So I like the idea of someone of Lázaro talking to this woman that was kind of his age, but a bit older, but it's his aunt, but they're close, they're only like 5 years apart. So it started with that relationship and that scene at the very beginning when he tells her. And so I worked kind of a little bit backwards. At some point, I would work a lot back further back, way like so that the body would enter more halfway through and not at the very beginning. And then the thing for me is that I have a group of actors that I like working with, and that helps me a lot to define the kind of film I can make. So with Rosa, this is the first feature that I make with her, and she had appeared a little bit in a short, but
Mhm.
but it was really the first thing. And I realized that character couldn't be played by Luisa. There is something that there's this woman that I work with a lot, Luisa, that if for this character it wouldn't work because of the dynamic that they have together. For me, the idea of sexual tension between them, even though they used to date, and I made a film that had like something about a relationship with them, and but this film needed to have an actual sexual tension for me, yeah, like in my mind, even though the film doesn't, is very ambiguous. And it needed to be someone a bit older. Anyway, so it was the first time I introduced a new person. For a long time, I haven't introduced new people into the films. but then the rest, it was like, okay, so I have the rest of the cast. So I started writing characters for people that I usually work with. I hadn't worked with Harold Torres in a very long time, but there was like a character for a mechanic because of the world of the cars and all that. So, and I knew that Harold likes cars and is very good with cars. And so it was kind of, he's a friend, he's an actor, he's good with cars. It made sense. And then, I found something for Rolo, something for Tere, something for Paco.
But but
Eh,
but you develop, for Tere, for Paco, for all of them, you have the idea has to be related to the character. You focus on
First, I think, generally, the first I think, okay, I got Rolo. What is he gonna do? I got Tere. What's she gonna
okay.
do? Not so much like I come up with a character and then I'm like, who's gonna play this character? It's more like, yeah, I think first of the people I have, because the way to be able to make the films the way I make them, I have to think about writing the way like as if I was a producer. So the way I do things is like, what do I have at my disposal? What's in my world? And then I think, okay, what about those people or those things can I use to make a film? Because if I think about it in terms of like any location, any characters, and so on, then I need to raise a lot more money to be able to get everything that I want. And a lot more time. I teach full time and I have a life that's not in Mexico City. So um, this allows me to move fast. So I already have locations more or less thought out. I have the people that I have, and so I write in relation to those constraints. And then producing is very fast. But also the nice thing about it is that I don't doubt a lot of the things because they're just set. It's like I don't think, well, should he be that character of the doctor? Should he be 75 years old or should he be 45 years old? Where is it different of the dynamics? So it's interesting questions for characters when you think about it, but I cannot ask that question because I don't already know the actor. So the actor defines the age of the character, the kinds of possibilities that character, because not all the actors can do everything. I mean, Paco can do more, Tere can do more, but I don't think Lázaro can do everything. I don't think Luisa can do everything. They're different kinds of actors, and so the actors also define the possibilities of the films.
Okay, and thinking as a producer, that's a good tip for the
Yeah, I talk to my students. Sometimes I talk to them about this. Like I think it's nice. It's not for everyone. Some people it's good. They want to make a film. They can wait 10 years. They can write their dream screenplay and they can find financiers and make their first film be $2 million. But if you don't have that patience or that capacity to raise that much funds and convince a lot of people, we all have friends that could act really well. Maybe they cannot act everything, but they could act
Mhm.
something. We all know spaces that look nice, that we like, that we enjoy. They cannot be the spaces, the locations for any film, but you can make a film in those locations. And so it's always about sort of working backwards. First, you work with the material world, and then you build with that material world into a conceptual world, as opposed to conceiving something in your mind and then finding the material world that fits your dreams. You
Yeah.
you know I think it's good to follow your dreams, but it's easier to make your dreams out of what you've got. So you know you don't have to,
To dream
much
very
easier to
no.
limit your dreams to the
Yeah,
things you already have next to you.
you don't have to do the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Um, so you were telling me you were gonna do a film in New York with different. Is the first, well, maybe not the first time, but it's a film you're gonna do with different actors. And
Yeah.
would you, so just because we're at the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival and you are Latin Canadian, would you ever make a film with with those actors here? No, because they don't live here, right? And you need to do
I mean, I
what you can.
could. I mean,
You
they,
could.
they
It'd be
could
ridiculous
they could
because you have to bring
travel
them
and
all.
so on. It's not that impossible. I mean, I used to live in Canada for many years. So I was in Vancouver for a year, but before that, I was like 12 years in Toronto.
Yeah.
Um, and I shot a film in Toronto. But now, because I live in the United States because I teach there, and I'm making a film at the university. it made sense to just do it where I teach
Yeah,
because, the same idea. It's like this so where I teach, I have my office, my colleagues' offices, I can borrow. It's very easy for me to, it's like shooting in my house,
yeah,
it's much easier. So, uh, and basically I'm making the film there because I spent time there, and at some point it's nice to take advantage of the things a little bit more as
yeah,
opposed to always. I mean, Copper is a strange film for me in that sense because the universe is more foreign.
okay,
Like the mine workers, the characters are all sort of like office workers, doctors, mine workers, uh, telecommunications operators. There is none of that. I don't have friends that do any of those jobs.
yeah,
I don't relate to that. The environment is also new. So everything is quite different. And in more recent films, everything was like the you know the characters played actors, the characters played film directors, the characters play things that have lots of friends that do those
makes,
things. And in circumstances, universes where I could see myself suddenly being. Whereas a Copper is totally not my world, which once in a while I have to do
yeah,
to think a little bit. And I've done those films before as well. So like I oscillate between making films about things where I could be there, like I could be one of the characters, and then films where my life is really far removed from that.
yeah, and also Copper is really very different from your new film that we'll see at BLAF at our festival next year. That is in one house only, so it's very different concepts.
Yeah, it's a super, super simple film. Like Copper was a little bit more complicated film because I had like this car that's like a sports car that was very difficult to move around. It's not a sports car; it's like a racing car.
Yeah,
And we were in the mountains and in small towns and sort of moving around an entire small crew, but still we had to move around and rent hotels and do that thing and be everybody was away from their house and so on. Whereas the new film is was kind of great to I shot it in one of my closest friends' apartments,
in Mexico
and
City.
in Mexico City she lent me her apartment. She left for a week. We shot it in a week with like all of the actors that I always work with in one a single location. It was super like stress-free, super
Cool. Yeah,
uh, nice. And so I could focus a lot in the things that I'm more interested in. And I think that film works for me a bit more. And I think it's stronger, even though it's such a simple idea.
yeah. No, no, I really like it, and also I really like Cobre. So, Nicolás Pereda, anything you want to tell to your Vancouver audience to come and see your film?
No, that they should support on the one hand the film festival, which I
Yeah,
think is
buy your
which
tickets to come to
which
this.
is important, and to watch some really great films that are really unique. It's really hard to get distribution in Canada for lots of films, like small and big,
Yeah,
and so these are like rare opportunities. So if like you're interested in Latin America in any way, I think the festival has always what I like about the festival is that it has a really big range. So my films are a little bit more in the art experimental side of things, perhaps, but there is like a really sort of
yeah,
wide range of things. So take advantage of that. If you like something a little bit challenging, but still comedy, uh, you can enjoy Copper.
yeah. Okay, Nico, muchas gracias. Thank you very
No,
much for this conversation.
thank you so much.